Hi, everybody. My name's Nicola Unite, and I am the head of middle school at Green School, Bali, and I'd like to welcome you right now. I've been at Green School this is my 7th year. So I arrived in 2013 as the middle school literacy teacher, and I've taken a few different roles in my time here. And I worked as the only middle school literacy teacher when we were quite a lot smaller back then, and then moved into a joint position between middle and high school literacy, where I taught advanced literature to high school, but grades 6, 7, and 8 literacy in middle school. I've then moved into a counselling and literacy role in middle school, as I'm completing my Masters of Counselling at the moment. So that was a really lovely position for me to take on with our middle school counsellor at the moment, and have since moved into a leadership role in middle school. So I've really been in middle school for 7 years, and I really I love it. I really love it. And coming from Australia, we don't have middle school. And this has been a really unique experience for me, because in Australia, we go up to primary school in year 6 and then jump into high school in year 7. And that's quite a big transition. Whereas here at Green School, and I know in other schools that do have middle schools, it's that space of transition that I think is so important. And at Green School, middle school sometimes gets a bad rap in film and in books and things like that. But I've experienced middle school at Green School only, and it's a really wonderful experience. It's a really engaging experience. I see it as this cocoon, really, where students come in from primary school having learned some foundational skills and in terms of their literacy and their math and their science, and then they come into middle school and there's that time of exploration. It's that moving into pre-adolescence, and who am I? These questions are really prevalent, and who are my friends, and how do I identify with myself and with the world around me? And so they have these 3 years, 6, 7, and 8, to explore those themes before they move into high school and generally have more of a clear direction, or they're asked to have more of a clear direction about where they're going and what's going to happen after school time. So our middle school program really embraces that idea. And I've got 2 daughters at Green School. They've been here since they were 3 and 4 years old. They started in the very beginning, and now they are in grade 4 and 6. So I have a middle schooler, and she's really responded so beautifully to this experience. It's lovely seeing it from a teacher and leader perspective, as well as it is seeing it from a parent's perspective. And so the middle school program is quite different to, I suppose, how you'd see a middle school program in a more traditional school, though it does have traditional elements. But we really like to get the students outside of the classroom, doing things, experiencing things. So a lot of the middle school program is elected. So students have this ownership over what they would like to learn and how they would like to learn. Those ideas are really important in middle school. What is it you're learning? How is it relevant for you? And how are you engaging in the learning? And if you don't feel like that that you're conscious of this or how you're doing this, then we need to talk about that. We need to explore that and see what works for you. So we break our day up into sort of 3 components. We have proficiency, experiential, and thematics, but that can look different for all sorts of different students. Sorry, there's a phone. We start our day with like a physical well-being, and students can choose anything from yoga to gardening to soccer, basketball, running off campus. So every block, which is term by term, they get to choose those subjects depending on what they feel that they would respond to. Then we have social emotional, green studies, classes, and Bahasa Indonesia, which is the language of Indonesia, their national language. And all students will enter into Bahasa Indonesia, learning the language, not only in those classes, but also in other classes. So going off campus or working in the rice field or doing seeds to table. And I'll get to that in a moment, but using Bahasa in a variety of different ways. Green studies, we're a green school. So we get out into the gardens, we get out and we learn about the plants, we learn about the creatures that live on our wild and rugged campus. We ask questions about, how we interact with nature, and we feel that that's a very important part of our program. And social emotional is also a very important part of our program. And in middle school, that is such an integral part of what it is to be a middle schooler. Who am I? How do I respond to different issues? All of these new ideas, these new ways of feeling are kind of really paramount in my experience. How do I navigate that? So we really do sort of, not just in social emotional classes, but in all aspects of middle school, we like to wrap around with that as an important centerpiece. For example, assemblies are student-driven, student-led. In our sort of transition in, transition out, that social emotional piece is really important, and students have access to our middle school counsellor and to a variety of teachers who they can speak to about, how they're feeling about things. We're a wallless environment, and so we break down those walls, not just in the physical classroom, but in that sort of teacher-student traditional way of seeing things. So students call us by our first names, so Ibu or Pak, which means mother or father. I know I'm talking a lot, but I'm just going to continue because then we have our proficiency classes, which is literacy and maths, and they will look more like your traditional classes, so to speak. But in saying that, at the moment, we have some students going outside 3 periods a day doing the rice cycle course. And so they're connecting with the local farmers. They're learning about the cycle of rice growing, rice harvesting. They're using Bahasa. They're out in the mud. They're cycling. They're writing articles about it. They're doing podcasts. So the learning is different, and it's messy and it's exciting and it's engaging. And that's, I think, really how we want our middle schoolers to feel. It's not just sitting in the classroom means learning, but every moment there's something to learn, and there's different ways that people can learn. And some people really learn on their feet and getting out, but other people learn, in a more traditional way. So it's sort of guiding our students in looking at their learning experience like that. And then we have something called Thematics, and they revolve around the Sustainable Development Goals. So there's different aspects to looking at how a thematic runs. We have one subject at the moment called education equity. And obviously this is about, what does equitable education mean on a global scale? How can we move towards that? Are we doing something like that? And we have some students going to the island of Sumba to visit a hospitality tourism school there that's been set up for the locals to have access to a different type of education that they might not usually have. So that is a pretty exceptional opportunity, and to put that learning experience into a really tangible framework, I think, is something that we feel very important in middle school, so students can understand what they're learning and how it affects, the world around them. And then we have our art subjects, which are also elected. So we can have things like costume and production design for the musical, or we have at the moment we have some landscape painting going on, or we have the ogre making, which is huge sculpture making for a very important Balinese festival. So they elect these subjects for the entire block and get involved in different ways of seeing the creative process. In our Wednesdays, we have a different kind of program, which is called Jalan Jalan, and that means to move and to travel. And so students can really deep dive for 4 hours into an experience of their choosing. We have something called Warrior Writers, which students are engaged in writing short novels, to stand-up paddleboarding and cleaning up the mangroves. It's sort of quite incredible to come from schools in Australia where obviously all of this wasn't on offer, to just being part of an education revolution where education can look so different.
One thing that I love about middle school is that the teachers in middle school really reflect the spirit of green school in many ways, that they're pushing boundaries, they're experimenting, and I often feel that middle school is kind of like a laboratory for green school. A lot of the really exciting new ideas start in middle school, which I think is reflective also of the developmental stage of students. They're trying new things, they're experimenting, they're trying on different identities. So our teachers embody that as well through their experimental approaches to teaching, trying new courses, trying new approaches, and it really keeps the environment very stimulating and very dynamic. Can you talk a little bit about the teachers? Um, a lot of people ask about our teachers. What process do we go through in hiring teachers? What motivates teachers to come here or to stay?
Thanks, Jen. I feel very privileged to work with the educators that we have in our middle school team. We have teachers from all over the world. We have teachers who've worked in international schools, but also who've come, like me, from a school in their country of origin. I think what is so interesting and wonderful about the teachers that we have is that, as you say, they're prepared to take risks, and they, I think that because we're in this environment that's sort of constantly evolving, when an idea comes, I'll have teachers approach me and say, what do you think about a games unit where students learn all about, the agricultural revolution through a game? And then I wasn't in leadership at that point, but our middle school head at that point said, that sounds like a great idea. How can we do that? So there's a lot of collaboration. I mean, it's constantly collaborative where teachers are going, I can imagine this happening. How could we, be teaching this through this lens? And we had a 3-week games unit where we had students all over the campus with these maps, and they were buying land and selling land, and they were experiencing different, climate crisis, and they were talking about it. They were talking about it out of class time. We have a wonderful teacher who leads our Seeds to Table program now, but that came out of students saying, I really want to learn more cooking. Our kitchen has opened itself up, every now and then students are going, I want to learn more. I want to learn more. And Ibu Ida, who's so involved in permaculture and learning herself about how we connect, the growth of our beautiful plants to what we put on our table. And so she listened to the students. And I think that that's what I see so much here, is that the teachers hear the students and go, that's a cool idea. How can we make that work? And now our Seeds to Table program is, one of our most popular courses, which runs on in our Wednesday Jalan time. And the students are making the most incredible vegan, organic meals, and they put this big feast down and they invite people, to try it. But just listening to their students talk about what they've been doing is quite incredible. They know what they've learned. They're excited about what they're doing, and they're really wanting to share it. So I feel like teaching here is quite it's a blessing. It's a very dynamic, really busy place, but a place where ideas don't get squashed. They get fueled, and that's not just for the teachers themselves, but for the students. So, we do, as Jen was saying, a lot of it is like a laboratory for these ideas. We have a great group of, they're all boys, who are really interested in the creatures on the campus, and they just every lunchtime we're looking for lizards and other creatures under rocks. And one of our teachers said, hey, I think we need to make a space for these kids. And we got one of our island expert on snakes and other creepy crawlies. We got him in on Wednesdays, and he took these students around on the most wonderful exploration of learning about these creatures. They put it together, made presentations for primary school on these creatures, and to see that, to see something that was just a break time, fun experience, whole learning program. It's really exciting, and I feel very lucky to have been part of that.
Yeah, it can be very exciting to see students' interests start as just an interest and then flourish and build into a whole learning for everybody or for anyone who's interested. Now, along those lines, though, we don't give the impression that every student gets to choose about every single aspect of their learning every single day. There are a lot of choices, but there are limitations to those choices. And, I think sometimes families come here with the expectation that, their children will just do everything that they want to and they can change their minds on a whim. And this, we are still a school. We still do teach the fundamentals of literacy and mathematics and science, that all students in middle school will take. There is some choice in their teachers to some extent, and to the choosing classes that fit their interests and their learning styles. But sometimes they might be in a class that they don't enjoy, and so that, I think, is an important thing for families to realize as well, that we're not just bending over backwards to make kids happy or to indulge their interests all the time. That we're also teaching these life skills of, well, sometimes you have to do something that isn't your first choice, or you don't always get your way about everything. And that sometimes is one of the most important lessons that we can pass on to our students. I just want to get to the first question. Yeah, so the question was, I wanted to know how parents can get involved at the school, and that's a great question. Lots of ways, and you're a parent. I'm a parent, but my son has graduated already, so I'll let you talk about that, Ibu Nicola.
How do parents are really involved in Green School. We have so many sort of opportunities, I suppose, for parents to be here on campus. I've never seen that before in other schools, but we have workshops in terms of how parents can attend and lead for other parents. And there's areas actually on campus specifically created for parents, which is it's kind of a unique experience. But we've had parents join the Seeds to Table class because they had a particular expertise in that area. We've had parents offer to lead a course in enterprise, pieces like that. But they also can be volunteer in some of our trips. And parents are involved in assemblies and our parent teacher meetings, in our community meetings. So they can be involved in so many different ways. I think we're always inviting parents in to see what's going on, with our middle school showcase week, and looking at what the students have been learning. We invite parents in like that, but parents aren't allowed to just walk in and out of classrooms at any time in the day. So that's, I think, important to know, because it is such a welcoming place. We have cafes on campus and things like that, but there is an area where the parents need to allow just to be the learning space for the day. And if they're invited into the classroom, or they've offered to bring something to the classroom, then that's really wonderful. So it's really how much parents want to put in as well whilst they're here. Some parents are really working a lot at home, but some parents, have that time and that expertise that they'd like to bring to the table. But also what you were saying before, Jen, is in terms of students going through subjects that they might not necessarily love, like a creature course. Maths and literacy are, as I said, more traditional subjects, and they don't get to choose those. They are essentially separated by grade level, and they'll follow that teacher all the way through the year. In maths, there's a little bit of movement around ability and where they fit. Some teachers teach differently in terms of their maths in their math program, but and I think what you said is really important. Otherwise, if you're allowed to sort of switch in and out where you feel like it, you don't get those coping skills. So in terms of electing subjects, we do have a 1 week decision making process, and after that then we ask students to stay in that class, because it is about, you know, following through and finding, you know, the growth in that experience as well, even if it's not your most favorite situation. I'm seeing a question. Hi, can you please give us an example of a thematics class? Yes, I did speak to a thematics class that was going on at the moment, which is the education equity class, where students are looking at equitable education globally. And so thematics classes can be treated very differently depending on the teacher. It can have more of a literacy lens where they're looking at news articles and they're interviewing people. We have that class actually creating a podcast where they're interviewing different people whilst they learn about what this means. We've had a water thematic where students have had to carry around 4 litres of water for a week and only use the amount of water that they were given per day for everything that they're using water for. So from showering to drinking to washing their hands. And so the idea behind thematics, I suppose the closest thing you could liken it to is social studies unit, a way of teaching, but really it's about making the learning experiential. So it's learning something about a sustainable development goal, but how the teacher runs that is up to them. But it's really a hands-on experience, very much a project-based experiential unit.
So next question, good one. How many students are you going to accept for this year? So since 2008, Green School is growing up, and now the school size is 520. And then for August 2020, we're looking a number about 550 until 600. But I can say that it's no more than 600. Yeah, and typically every years we have about 25% current enrolled family would leave at the end of the school year. So that's about that number we have to fill the left space by to the newcomers. And then we do have, as Ibu Jane said previously, we have a waiting list system there. In April, we will be ready to offer space for new families who already wait list. And then, yes, that's about the capacity of the next school year at Green School. You want to add something, Bo?
What are the typical class sizes like? In middle school, our class sizes range probably between about 12 and 18. So really incredible class sizes, you know, compared to a class of 30. So that's a privilege.
Yeah, that's typical in the U.S. and most countries around the world have over 20 students in a classroom.
Yeah. So we don't ever really get over 20 for a class unless something's really popular and the teacher says, okay, our musical theatre class at the moment is 25, but I think that's good because we need 25 in the musical.
So talking about Wallaceness learning environment, before this webinar, I just met the parents came to me for a short meeting asking about, unfortunately, his child is for middle school. And then he was asking about how his daughter would be in learning together, collaboration with the younger and then the older one, which means we have different learning neighborhood there, primary and then high school. So not only middle school. Yes, Bo?
Yes, we have these different learning neighborhoods, and middle school is our learning neighborhood. So there is, we are a whole school where the students see each other in break time and lunchtime, and we come together with whole school assemblies. So there's a constant sort of interaction between students and teachers. But in terms of crossing into classrooms, sometimes we have some mentor programs set up from teacher to teacher. We'll have, middle school students move into some primary classes and do some work with them, and or high school coming into middle school, but not really in our sort of common learning environments. There is one class at the moment, a filmmaking class with Pac Adrian, and I know that 2 of my middle schoolers are doing that with the high school class, and that's something that we can make happen, because that sort of lent itself to that student. But yeah, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, Jen.
I was just thinking, I previously taught in primary school, and one of the really important programs that we had in place, especially for new students, was teman-teman, which means friends in Bahasa Indonesia. And that was a way of pairing usually primary age students with middle or high school students. Often it was in the form of students who spoke the same language. So for example, if we had a primary student coming from Russia, who, was speaking English and working really hard in school to speak English every day, but once a week wanted to sit down with another student who spoke Russian, and it was an opportunity to have more rich conversations and kind of a buddy system. That was something that we have been doing for several years. And so there are ways that the learning neighborhoods sometimes work together for social emotional development, but also I've seen a lot of classrooms pair for doing academic work. Well, more in the form, not so much academic work, more in the form of projects. So when I was in primary, we sometimes had classes from middle school or high school come into primary to share whatever they were doing in the classroom. So that it definitely does happen. Because the wall-less classrooms are a metaphor for our whole approach to teaching, but that doesn't mean that we have students, a grade 7 student going into a grade 12 class. That would be unusual if we did that. Occasionally there's a little bit of movement, but typically they stay with their classes because they're, developmentally that makes sense. I did want to mention, I don't know if we talked about it at the beginning of the year, exactly the ages that are encompassed in middle school, because this might actually be different in different school systems around the world. But at Green School, middle school is grades 6, 7, and 8, which is ages 11, 12, 13, starting at ages 11, 12, and 13. Okay, and here's a question asking about the differences and similarities between the curriculum for year 8 in the middle school at Green School and year 9, which is high school in the UK. I'm not particularly familiar with UK systems, but maybe you could generally talk to that question.
I think that you'd see quite a few differences in terms of the way that we run middle school, just in the way that the students can elect, and that we don't move through subjects like science so chronologically. The literacy curriculum, so we've created that by looking at best curricula around the world, looking specifically at Australia, Canada, America, and we've created something that definitely sits on par with other curriculum, but you're not going to see a perfect alignment at all, because we have the flexibility and the creativity to move the subjects in the directions that we feel are working with our students here, all coming from different places at different levels. And as I say to some parents, we're not a Singaporean school who's sitting to a set curriculum. So we definitely have a lot more outside of class. So we don't have exams and tests. So it's definitely going to feel quite different to the curriculum that you'd be experiencing in the United Kingdom. I can see another question. Can you talk about sustainability in Green School? Absolutely. As I said before, a lot of our subjects revolve around the Sustainable Development Goals, and we talk about this a lot, and try and link all of our learning to, looking at what we're inspired by nature, how we can, protect nature, and how we can tread more carefully on this planet. Our Quest project, which is a grade 8 passion project, is all linked to sustainability and social justice. And students are able to follow their own self-motivated passion project, but it needs to link to, a small issue that they see in the world, or a big issue, and how do they create a project that makes an impact on that. So teaching students that you can make a small but impactful change, and that is working for the better. I know that in our CISA table program, always working on zero waste, so only using what's local and what's sustainably sourced. When we go on trips, we have a leave no trace policy. So we are it's paramount, I suppose, to our thinking here. It's not just one class talking about sustainability, but we're always in that conversation. Do we have any students from Turkey? Yes, we have a Turkish family. You've got some more information on that?
So totally, this semester we have 44 different nationalities coming from around the globe, and then it's enrich our community, and we celebrate our diversity here. And time to time we have more people coming from different country join our community.
So I'm seeing Lawrence. I can see that you're asking that your daughter would have already completed 2 years in high school in the United Kingdom. By the time she starts middle school at Green School, how do you think she would adapt to the transition? I'm not sure. Would she come down to middle school? I think that sounds like she would go into high school. Yeah, it really does depend on how old she is. If she's almost 14, then she's probably going to be looking at high school, as far as I am aware. And 2 years in high school sounds like she'd be going to high school. Yeah, but I can see that Lawrence she turns 13. She turns 13 in July 2007. She turns 13 in July this year. So she'd be going into grade 8.
That would be grade 8.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's okay. Yeah. No. I mean, it just really depends on what sort of personality type she is, Lawrence, and is she academic? Is she interested in outside environment? Is she a mature 13-year-old? Is she an immature 13-year-old? It's sort of dependent on the particular student who comes in to see us, and it can work differently for different students. So it's hard. That's a hard one to answer without sort of meeting your daughter. Do we have a policy regarding the mix of children in regards to their mother tongue or country of origin?
Okay. Well, that's a great question and a good segue into letting everybody know that next, in 2 weeks, we're going to have another live Q&A with our Green School English team. So we have a program for primary school age students. So this is ages 6 to 11. And it's a partner program with Green School. So it's a program on the Green School campus that's focused on building English language skills. And many students in the Green School English program then transition into Green School Bali. They're having lunch together, they're having recess together, they're interacting a lot.
Come to assemblies.
They come to assemblies. They do after school activities together. But the focus in the Green School English program is English language skills. Now in middle school, we do require at least an intermediate level of English, and in high school we require more advanced English skills. So if you have a middle school student who doesn't yet speak English, we would recommend doing, either an online English program or some English tutoring in your home country in advance of applying to Green School, because while we do have English language support in middle school, we need students to be able to kind of hit the ground running and be ready to start engaging in these challenging classes. And if they're only at a beginner level with English, it makes the transition very, very difficult. But we do, for intermediate students, we do have an English language learner program, and for many years, we've been helping those students transition into Green School Bali, and they do just fine, and their English skills grow phenomenally while they're here. In terms of the mix of children, this is a broader admissions question. We do focus on diversity in our admissions decisions, and we because we value and celebrate diversity, and so we do look at nationalities of our applicants. Is it recording? Okay. And so it's something that we always look at, and we want applicants from all over the world. We encourage applications from people living in every country around the world. But we don't have a particular policy in terms of we accept this number from this country, this number from that country. But it is one of many factors that we look at when we are making our admissions decisions.
Is Spanish offered?
Well, our English language learning teacher does offer Spanish as an additional language. On the topic of language, I should say that across the school, we teach Bahasa Indonesia. English is the primary language of instruction in everywhere, from early years to high school, but we teach Bahasa Indonesia as a second language for most students, although we do have Indonesian students who obviously speak that as their primary language. And then for middle and high school students, there's an option to take additional languages, and you can talk about that.
Yeah. We've actually just introduced French and Spanish into our curriculum. In middle school, though, you do need to have foundational Bahasa Indonesia before you are before you're able to move into either French or Spanish, and it's only once a week as well. So it's not a rigorous French or Spanish program, but it's more conversational. Some students are French or Spanish, and their parents would like them to, continue speaking or writing, but you do need to have foundational Bahasa Indonesia first, because we believe that everybody needs to have a command of the language of the country that we're living in. Yes. Thanks, Lawrence. How do I find about costs? That's definitely not me.
Yeah, that's on our website. We're in the middle of revamping our website, and actually I just today uploaded the approved tuition and fees for the next academic year. So you can find that on our website, greenschool.org. We have just a couple minutes left. I think we're about out of time. So in case anybody joined late, I just want to emphasize that applications for students who want to start in August, which is when our next academic year begins, are due by March 1st to be considered for the first round of admissions.
Lawrence is asking if we'll get a copy of the webinar.
Yep, it takes us a little while to do the editing, and we're working on a process around that. I know some of you might have been on previous webinars, and those will be sent out. So please just be patient with us. But so everyone who registered and attended will receive a copy. All right, so I think we're about out of time. Do you guys have anything else to add?
So yes, everyone are welcome to send us email through admissions@greenschool.org. As well as for the course information, we will be happy to share with you specific costs for every different family, because they may have different number of children. We have fee structures and discount structure, etc. So yeah, we are waiting for your emails. Hit our inbox.
I just want to thank you all for being here, and this is my first webinar, which was exciting, and it was really lovely to speak with you via your messages over there, and I look forward to welcoming you and answering any further questions about middle school at Green School. There's a quick question about the video, but I'm not sure how to. I don't know how to answer that.
You can just send directly to
Yeah.
us, admissions@greenschool.org.
Admissions@greenschool.org. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.